The best arena champions for 2023 on the offense side, we're going to rate them. Let's see if you have any hidden gems in your vault that you're not using. Let's get right into it. What up team, it is MurderInc here. We're making a tier list for the best champions you can use for arena offense here. Now, tier lists in this game, very hard to make. There's no single champion content anywhere, right? So how can you classify a single champion? It was hard, but what did I do? This is just my opinion. I'm currently in the best arena clan in the entire game, probably for the past 2 years, so it is going to be a credible source, and I worked with them to make this list for you guys. This is going to include people who are in platinum, gold, anything below gold, not really, because arena is kind of a joke in that aspect, but for any future PvP content that can come out, unless it's totally different, which would be interesting but hard to do, this is going to stay pretty fluid. Of course, new champions are added all the time, and they could possibly change things up, so make sure you see the champions that are used here compared to anyone else that comes out in the future. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to Rats from the clan. I did use some footage from his channel to show while I'm explaining a few of these champions and how they work in offense. All of the clips you see are from top 5 in the entire game on reset for placements in the platinum arena. Also, shout out to Sheeny as well. Definitely check out their YouTube channels, their Twitch channels. Give them a subscribe, show them some love for sure. So let's get right into it. As you can see, we're on the tier list. We have broken, meta, off meta, above average, and EE. EE stands for everybody else, because after you kind of place these champions, every single other champion is going to be in the same category. And to do this accurately, it's a little bit difficult. I was even talking with my clan members when we were making this, because platinum in itself is like its own beast. So one thing I do ask you guys to do, and make sure you understand this when you're watching this, don't take a picture of anything that you see on the screen, because you cannot just look at a picture of this tier list and understand what's going on without any context. So I'm going to make a tier list, then I'm going to shift the tier list afterwards, because like I said, rank 1 through 50 in platinum is totally different than, I mean, I would even say rank 1 through 15 or 20 in platinum on reset is a totally different animal than everything else, literally everything else. So we're going to go over that. This is going to apply to everybody, of course, like I said, because if you're not in gold, it's simply because you're new to the game and you're getting your account up. But this is going to be probably the most accurate list that anyone can give for an offensive tier list. So let's start off with Arbiter. Where's Arbiter going to go? Arbiter's a champion that pretty much everybody has. She is going to be into the broken tier. Now, I use these words specifically to not have to use SS, S, A, B, because those don't really count for what we're trying to do here. So you might be looking at this broken saying Arbiter's not broken, right? It's what Arbiter enables you to do. So Arbiter is very high base speed. She's a turn meter boost, attack power increase, revive. She's an A2 AoE that can strip buffs. People are building her with a decent amount of accuracy nowadays for that strip. So she's going to be into the first tier that I did name broken. This will make kind of more sense when I start getting to other champions, but we had to put Arbiter here because she's just so pivotal when you're trying to outspeed an opponent, who has a very hard offense to beat, and she deserves the top tier spot on this tier list for sure. The next champion is going to be no surprise to anybody. It's going to be Yumeko. What does Yumeko do? Listen, cooldown reset on your champions, just like Kymar, but she's also just like Warlord, because she increased the cooldown of the opponents that you're facing here. She has fantastic base speed on this champion, and with that, that's why Arbiter is also extremely good for offense, because she's often used on defense with like 400 and something speed once you get really high into platinum. So the only possible way to win is using an Arbiter Hegemon or one combo like that to attempt to outspeed someone with a very fast Yumeko. So if you have this champion, GG. You pretty much win. Now let's start getting into some damage dealing champions. It's going to be no surprise to anybody that Mr. Baron enters the broken tier. He got reworked Some people were saying it's a nerf. It was kind of dumb of them, but he is now the best, or one of the best, going to the broken section of this tier list nukers. His A3, it's like a truck. We know this. It was just passive before, had to be unlocked. Now it's an activatable ability, dealing pure damage. Like I said, just doing insane. He also has an attack aura, so we have to keep that in mind. That's a huge draw for Baron. Often Baron teams are going to have Baron as the leader, because we don't care about speed. The opponent we're facing will probably have Stone Skin, something like that. And we're going to use a champion like Yumeko, Renegade for a budget option, I guess, but Kymar as well to reset that cooldown, making sure he can double nuke, and it's really hard to survive. Granted, just one Baron nuke, but two of them, forget about it. His A1 hits hard as well, so it's a good pair with ally attack champions like Nekret or anybody else. And his A2, of course, playing that defense down without accuracy, can help you out if you're fighting a really tanky opponent that has a lot of resistance. With that being said, let's move on to the next nuker that is also going to be in this top tier here, Goegrid. Now listen, the Nutcracker, he's fairly new. As far as coming to the game, we know how good he is, ignoring Stone Skin, unkillable, shields, like what? So as soon as this guy was added, the whole community kind of realized that this guy's something special. His A1 hits like an absolute truck, for sure, proccing damage multiple times back to back. It's really hard to survive against this guy. He can struggle against some teams because Baron's a bit tankier than this guy. George is, I mean, they're both glass cannons, but I would say the overall feel is that Baron's easier to keep safe than Goegrid. But if you have this guy, same thing with Baron, you're cleaning house, pretty much cleaning house. It's very hard to survive against someone like a Goegrid unless you're locking him out. Even then, his A1, if it procs multiple times, with that passive of ignoring defense, you're in trouble. The next champion we have in the broken tier is going to be Duchess. Everyone knows how strong Duchess is. She's got a speed lead, not the best speed aura, but she's a speed lead. She has a damage reduction on an AoE level, perfect veil, making the enemy target her, keeping your team safe, revive, increase attack, AoE heal. There's not much to say here. Hard to argue against this. Duchess is incredibly strong in both sides of arena, but offense, she can be pivotal for your team. Now we have another set of new champions coming in on this broken tier. We have the newest partner duo added to the mix here. Machrika and Taras, the Ukrainian duo added to the game. These guys are busted. If you've seen them, it's kind of like, I have to call it this, an upgraded version of Siphi and Rotos, right? They have different uses, kind of, as far as what they can do. Machrika and Siphi specifically are their most different. I mean, I guess Taras and Rotos both have their strong suits, Rotos being a lot tankier for sure with this passive, but these two are probably, if there was a tier above Broken, which there isn't because Broken is obviously the top tier, these two would be there. They're so hard to beat. They've become pivotal since being added to the game to any type of PvP in this game. So if you have them, it's pretty much GG. Next, we have Nekret, one of the best defensive options for offense. So let's think about that. The best defensive option for offense. This is the guy protecting your Barons, your Goegrids, any other nuker that you want to survive an initial hit. We have reaction gear, we have stone skin, so the enemy is probably surviving the initial hit. Not probably, but there's a high chance to, depending on where you are. If you're in a place where you're not seeing a lot of reaction gear, stay there for as long as you can. Please, reaction procs are the most annoying thing in this game. So what does he offer? Shields. A passive with his shield as well after getting hit. It's really hard to kill someone with a Nekret protecting your nuker. You have an ally attack from this guy that, I mean, when paired with someone like a Goegrid or a Baron, just does insane amount of damage outside of the nuker's turn. So it's kind of like passive damage from the nuker that you wouldn't get from anyone else, which is why he's in this top tier as well. So moving on from Nekret now to the next champion being Mortu Macabre. This guy, it's funny, if you asked me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have said, he's not that good. He's like, okay, it's whatever. With how things have shaped and shifted in this meta, Mortu's crazy. So the main draw to Mortu isn't his A1, isn't his A2, it's actually the passive that can proc Peril. With stone skin gear, really tanky defenses that are hard to one-shot right away, it's common you're going to get hit. what better champion to get hit than someone that has a chance to proc either turn meter gain or unlock the secret skill being Peril that just one-shots everyone with a block revive. That's the key. Block revive added to this makes this guy pretty unstoppable. So he gets that top tier of Broken. You'll see him fairly consistently. He's probably one of the most consistent champions that have outlived any new champion coming into this game as far as the meta goes, for sure. So it's safe to say that Mortu isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Now, unlike the other Ukrainian duo, we do not have Siphi in the Broken tier, but we do have Rotos. Why is Rotos so strong? As someone, and I've showed you guys my Rotos before, +4, really good ascended gear. He hits crazy hard. He scales with attack and HP. He's really tanky. There are a few offensive options that quote-unquote counter Rotos, but they can be handled pretty easily if you build a proper Rotos, for sure, and you don't really see them on defense. So Rotos, he's someone that doesn't need a Nekret. He doesn't need any type of champion like protecting him because he just has such a strong base kit where you can use him as a single nuker. Will it be a slow win? Of course it'll be a slow win, but he has proven himself time and time again to be such a consistent, slow and steady 100% win rate character on the offense, which is why he has once again secured his slot in that top tier for offense. In our last addition to this top tier, so we have one more looking at this, who's it going to be? Any guesses? Probably not who you'd think. The next one is going to be Astralith. Why Astralith? This champion was memed on for so long and now he has a bomb. Why is the bomb so good? We already know it's because of Stone Skin gear. Stone Skin is countered heavily by bombs. Astralith has a very high base attack, good base speed, and his bomb is irresistible. So even if they build something like resistance, it doesn't matter to Astralith. He can stack attack, stack speed, place it on the opponents. He does need another champion to kind of fit into this Broken tier role. I will get to that once we get to the other tiers and champions. However, even on his own, if you pair him with Mortu Macabre, him with Rotos, him with Baron Georgid, he will take out whatever Stone Skin target there is. Guaranteed. It's so easy to build enough attack on him and enough speed to take out at least one Stone Skin target for sure. So he secures a slot in the Broken tier as the final champion there. Now we're moving on to the next tier, which is going to be the meta tier of champions, where any combination of this in the tier above is going to be perfect. Because as we said before, there's no one single champion that's going to carry. If you have a combination of 4 champions in the top row, you're unstoppable. Let me just say right now, you're unstoppable. Granted, you need to have the proper builds and all of this, but I wanted to clarify that right away. So now we have a duo coming in first. We have Cupidus and Venus. Why is this duo so strong? Because of their partner bonus, on top of a couple other things. First of all, similar to Baron, Cupidus also has an attack aura that's very strong if he's placed as the leader, but every time he's hit by someone, he's going to auto attack with his A1. So if the enemy has someone on the defense that has an AoE, you're doomed. All you have to do is protect these 2 champions and let the whatever defense you're fighting hit you a bunch of times, and this guy's going to melt through shields, stone skins, any passive you can think of that we've already seen that's considered very strong. Cupidus is going to shred through it so quickly. On top of that, Venus isn't just there for the passive. She has an AoE debuff strip that doesn't have to hit the champions, which is so strong with Sheep being so high in the meta right now. Sheep being the polymorph blessing, of course. So these two paired together perfectly fit into this second tier of this tier list. Now the next champion is going to be Warlord. Warlord has the same perks as Yumeko. However, Warlord does not have, of course, the refreshing of the cooldowns. He just puts everything on cooldown. He has to hit the enemy, which is why he is 1 tier lower because of, again, like I mentioned, the sheep effect. But that's not enough to lower him anymore because he has an A2 that also provides block debuff as well as a shield buff and a heal that can help your team out significantly if he does in fact need a second turn as well. So he's pretty self-explanatory. If you face a Warlord, you know getting locked out is kind of GG, whether on offense or defense, making him such a strong and vital part of the arena. Next, we have the one, the only Kymar. He's been strong forever. He resets every single cooldown on your team with his A3. His A2 has a sleep that also strips buff. If you get lucky, you can take off Stone Skin, which is hilarious and huge. Granted, it's not the highest chance of happening, but being able to put your opponents to sleep, building this guy with speed and accuracy, it's easy to see why he's so strong. Again, one factor that makes him lower in this tier list, being in the second rank compared to the first one, is he has to hit targets often. So using someone like a Kymar against, for example, Cupid Venus duo is pretty much suicide because he has an AoE A1, AoE A2. Yes, he has a reset, but has a very long cooldown, so he's going to be proccing someone like a Cupidus over and over again. And on top of that, if you have Sheep on your team, he's going to get that polymorph effect on him quite often. The next champion in this second tier is going to be Tuhanarak. Very strong champion, synergizes very well with Astralith, and you can kind of already see where the comparison goes. Astralith places the bomb, Sheep places the debuff spread, but she's not just used for that. Of course, she has her A3 as well. Increased speed is going to go a long way to cycle back around for sure, but I would definitely say her main use is going to be the fact that she can spread bombs very easily, and being Void Affinity, she doesn't have to worry about being a weak affinity like some of the other characters we will see on this tier list. With that being said, we have a free champion that pretty much everyone's going to have that's watching this, which is going to be Ronda. Ronda's unique because she's always talked about in like a damage dealing role, like, oh, you can one-shot Rotos with Ronda. However, there's an even better build. I mean, it's hard to say better, you kind of have to adapt to the moment, but support Ronda is very strong. Extremely fast, taking advantage of her block passive abilities, pretty much all the debuffs she has, right? Everything she does, ignoring shields, adding speed to this champion, making her really fast and tanky, not using her for the damage role, letting someone else take that slot, makes her a very strong choice. Now, of course, you can still use her to one-shot a Rotos another team if he is in a defense that doesn't respect someone using a Ronda. However, it can be easily countered by someone like an Ultimate Death Knight, but she is pretty much the go-to for one-shotting someone like a Rotos. Not just Rotos, you can use her as a general nuker as well. She's going to be very strong, but the reason why she's in the second tier is because she has so much versatility with that support build as well as the damage dealing build. Alright, so the final champion for this tier is going to be, again, Ultimate Death Knight, someone that many people will have. We know how strong he is, right? We know his kit. The fact that he redirects all single target damage to himself, it protects so many people because of how many hard-hitting single target champions there are in this game. So with that and the fact that he's red affinity, countering many blue affinity champions makes him crazy strong. Perfect fit for something like Stone Skin, but you don't really need it because his stats are incredibly strong as well. He does have quite slow animations. I mean, he has the goofiest run ever when he's running, on purpose of course, so it can slow down your attacks, but unless you're competing in Platinum, you probably don't care about that too much. But his passive, everything he brings to the table is strong enough to put him on this second level of the tier list for sure. Now that we've gone over that, we have the next tier down, which is going to be off meta. Something that's not quite meta, but is strong enough to be swapped in to do slightly less than anyone above. So with that being said, we have Ramantu, the champion you can unlock after Arbiter in the mission section. Now, one thing to note here is that it kind of didn't clarify this. This is not a left to right tier list. If it's on any tier of this, they're equal. We'll just call them equal. Of course, there's going to be stronger and weaker ones, but this is not placed in any particular order because it's just too hard to do. So we have Ramantu. The reason why he's so much lower on the list is because of Polymorph. If Polymorph wasn't a thing, it's quite possible he would be in the top tier. He has block passive on an AoE, which is incredibly strong. If you can get that on the enemy team, you can disable some crazy passives that really hinder offense teams, and it's extremely strong, as we've seen with Ronda, who has that ability. So for that fact alone, he is placed on this third tier here. Great slot, not used as much anymore because of the reasons I said. Polymorph, but if you want to gamble with this, you can still use him because you will still land the ability, even if you are going to suffer from the sheep effect afterwards. The next champion we have is going to be Basilius Roanas, who This is a one-shot specialist champion. He's a multi-hitter, he deals a ton of damage, he is someone like Ronda that can be used to quickly get rid of tanky healers or someone like a Rotos. He's been used for a very long time for this job. Good multipliers, good ignore defense. With that being said, he is placed in this third tier for sure, and he's going to hold this spot for quite a while because it's hard to compete with a champion like this. Even though it is a bit niche, you can plug and play him at your convenience, and he's going to work out very well for you. Next, we have Ailil. He was a guaranteed champion, so some people may have this guy. He is in the third tier because he's similar to Goegrid. However, he's what Goegrid should have been as far as what the kit is. He just does a lot less damage, but he can still be used in niche situations because he does ignore stone skin gear. Now, if you're facing, I don't know, the top teams in the world in this game, it's going to be very hard, if possible at all, to one-shot anyone through stone skin. But for 99% of players, it's going to be very easy to one-shot someone through stone skin as long as you have good stats on this guy. So don't worry about that. His kit's really strong because he has that niche ability to ignore so many powerful buffs in this game. Next, we have Siphi. Of course, Siphi can be paired with Rotos for the partner bonus, but with the lack of debuffs being used nowadays on defense teams, it's not as strong, so she is there for the A1 sleep, turn meter down, small heal you can get from the A1, of course increasing turn meter, speed buff, block debuff, defense. She has all the good buffs for sure, crazy base speed, and she has the revive. So those things alone, Siphi is one of the most self-explanatory champions on this list here, along with Arbiter, of course, as to why she is so strong on this list, coming in with the third tier. Next champion we have is Hegemon. Hegemon has gone through a lot of changes on tier lists, especially in the arena. His job right now isn't to nuke anybody. With reaction gear, stone skin gear, it's just way too hard to use this guy in a nuking fashion. You can still do it the lower you get. However, as time goes on, he's going to be less and less viable, which is why we want to make a tier list that's going to last for a while. So with that being said, he's in the third tier here, most commonly used for his A1 ability. Evil Eye is a mastery, but the fact that he always goes first holds its own here. Like I said, if you're facing someone that's always going to be faster than you, or if you know you don't have a fast champion because you haven't rolled lucky, or using your best speed gear in other places of the game, which is probably common here, you're going to open up with Hegemon's A1 on their fastest champion by just looking at the turn meters, guaranteeing your fastest champion, after Hegemon of course, goes next. That is so strong of an ability. The reason why it's tier 3 is because it's not as common to see crazy fast champions on defense teams the higher you get, but the lower you get, it's a lot more common. So this guy is much stronger the lower you get for sure. And of course, once that A1 is used, he will then be able to use his A2 afterwards, hopefully after some of the block debuffs on the defense team have worn off, making his A2 just as strong as well. After this, we have Candraphon. Candraphon, mostly seen on defense, but can definitely be used as a weaker nuker for the offensive team for sure. His A1 hits incredibly hard, his AoE hits incredibly hard. Extra turn, the buffs are nice, and it can buy some time as you're waiting for stone skin gear or reaction gear to fall off in case you have to build this guy kind of quickly. And of course, the perfect veil and the tankiness of Candraphon is very strong. On top of being red affinity, there are very few red affinity champions that you're going to see, and because of all of those facts, he's in the third tier for sure. Next champion we have is going to be Lydia. Lydia, as we all know, her passive is very strong with the block revive, and if you try to revive after that, she's going to revive your team. So while she's not a reviver, she has an interesting interaction with reviving your team on top of strengthen buff on your team, increase speed, and of course defense down and weaken. But she also has block buffs if you want to snipe and use that A3, making her fast on a specific target. You can prevent them from getting any buffs before your champions get a turn here. It's good for blocking passive that apply buffs after someone's hit. So Lydia is in this third tier because she was definitely more popular in previous metas, but she still has to be on this list because her kit just has so much going for it. The next champion here is going to be Underpriest Brogni. Now, it's not going to be that common for someone to have a Brogni free for the arena. You can check and see if your clan boss build is going to be viable for this, but His kit, once again, pretty self-explanatory. You're not looking at it for the damage on the reflect. While it's good in PvE, it's not as good for Arena. It is going to add up, but you're really here for the shield that's kind of like Bolster. Since Bolster was added to the game, he's definitely fallen off slightly, but the fact that he has a heal makes him viable and places him rather high on this list for sure. Shield grow, if you can get it off, it's nice, but the odds you're going to be able to get off the ability to grow your shield any substantial level is going to be rather hard, but he's been seen, he's been used, and his kit's been vetted to be thorough enough to be on this list, so he is in fact here. Next we have Vizier. Similar to Tuhanarak, however, he has to hit the target. It can weak hit because he has red affinity, so that's the only thing keeping him in this third tier. If he was void affinity, he would be a tier up for sure, equaling out with Tuhanarak, but like I said, the affinity thing alone is what keeps him one tier lower, making him slightly worse as a debuff spreader. So pairing him with Astralith, if you have him, is going to be incredibly strong if you know the team has Stone Skin gear. And the final champion in this third tier is going to be Leorius. Leorius, not typically used in an offense team, but becomes stronger the lower down you go on rankings. He can take a hit. He has unkillable buff. The lower his health is, the more damage he does, making him a complete powerhouse. So this is going to be the ultra endgame tier list. Now, if you want to talk about specifically something like gold, for example, what you would do is you would simply take all of these champions and put them in this top row, because this is kind of the breakdown of what it's like in between gold, platinum, everyone else here. The top champions are just so strong, and then you have kind of the second tier of champions, which are going to be the champions that I have currently remaining. So first, starting off with someone like Gala Longbraids. Gala Longbraids is not quite the top tier of champions you can use if you are farming gold, but she's stronger than everybody else. So what I would do if I was making this for real is I would be getting rid of off meta above average, and there would just be 3 tiers here. There'd be the first tier of everyone I've talked about already that was only broken down to kind of show you the difference of these champions in like a platinum level. But now that we've established that, we move even lower down the list to something like gold arena, we can shove all of those champions to the top of the list. Use these champions, you're going to have the easiest time in gold. And now these are the champions slightly under. So Gala Longbraids, I talked about her when she first came out. People were like, Murder, you're crazy, you just have OP gear. That's not it. This champion hits hard. She's a triple hit, she has a single hit, and then she has a double hit. Ignoring defense based on having a shield. We're in a bolster meta, so she's always going to have a shield, and she gets a shield when she hits champions. She's used by Sheeny, that we can see using her to great success. I believe he plays second place on an arena reset with Gala in her arsenal, so she can compete against some of the champions we see in this top level for sure. But she's definitely not as strong as them and has very niche uses as to where you can use her. Because she's just not enough on her own, you need some type of very strong supporting 3 with this champion, which is why she has to be at a lower rank. The next one's Mountain King. Mountain King is such a problem for people because he gets his damage based off a survivability stat being HP. He ignores defense baseline. If he gets extra turns from something like Relentless Gear, he can mow down your entire team. He's kind of like Rotos, but he is red affinity, being a good affinity when fighting against most defenses. So with that, Mountain King is going to be above everyone else that's not on this list for sure. And we cannot forget Trunda. Trunda has significantly fallen off. She's just slightly better than every other nuker because she hits harder, but that's all she has. Her value of having an A3 and A2 ability is good, but it's not as good as it used to be because reaction, stone skin, all of these things are major factors for sure. So while Trunda is going to be in the second tier for strongest champions for most players, the higher you get in your progression, if you really are pushing for Platinum Arena, the worse and worse Trunda is going to get. Next we have Inithwie, a very interesting champion. He's here, although we have to mention that he requires gear. If you don't have very good gear for this champion, you're not going to do well. His A2 single target ability can one-shot pretty much anybody, but having a single target with a block revive simply isn't enough. and his passive is strong, making all of his abilities block revive, but the problem is the A3 that's an AoE does not hit hard enough. If it hit hard enough, this guy probably would be in one of the top tiers, but since it isn't, he's going to be in this tier because he's slightly better than every other nuker on a baseline level. The next champion we have is going to be Ray. Similar to the other 4 champions I've already talked about, she hits extremely hard, like everyone else in the tier below. However, she has a very hard-hitting buff strip that also freezes. This alone absolutely puts her above everyone else because of the utility she has. I've done takeovers, I've used her, and I've seen people sit at the top of Gold 5, sometimes teetering into Platinum during the week quite easily with Ray because of how hard she hits on all 3 of her AoEs. Another really unique part to this champion, Trunda has double AoE. The first 2 champions, Gala and Mountain King, are single target. Inithwie has 1 AoE, and she has 3, she being Ray, of course. We have an AoE A1, A2, and A3, 2 of them hitting very hard. The AoE A1 is more of like a failsafe since you're going to be building her with accuracy anyways. For that freeze, you also have an AoE defense down chance as well, guaranteeing any hit after the defense down is placed, you just win. The final champion for this list is going to be Tormin. What does Tormin do? Outside of the fact that he can hit stupid hard if you build him for damage, if you see a team that has no way of protecting itself from debuffs, he's an easy swap in. He's not as good as other champions because if you freeze a target, they take less damage, so they can be harder to kill, making your fight take longer, which is why he's definitely nowhere near the top of this list. But he's definitely above everyone else in this setting because he has that freeze, he has the provoke, he can steal buffs, he ignores defense, he just has so much to his kit that puts him one step above the everyone else list. Now, that's going to conclude this list for pretty much the majority of players in this game. Now that we've gone over everything here, one important thing to say is, you might be thinking, Murder, there are so many champions I can think of that should be in this tier 2 being meta for the Gold Arena. While you may be right, they're literally with everyone else for a reason. So you might be thinking, okay, who's a good bomber? The Fusion, the Rat King, he applies poisons that turn into bombs. He's as good as every other nuker. He's not going to be better than Ray, Inithwie. Same thing with Gaius. He's a bomber, AoE bomber, commonly used. There's nothing special to him as a bomber over a nuking champion. Why is that? Because bombs can be cleansed or resisted very easily. The reason why someone like Astralith is on this as the only bomber is because you need 0 accuracy, which means you don't have to build attack, accuracy, and speed. You can eliminate an entire stat from this character. So the fact that you need accuracy on any other bomber just makes them with everyone else and nowhere on this list due to how hard they are to build. Everyone you see here is pretty reasonable to build, with the exception of Ailil that I mentioned before and Inithwie. And then once you move to 1 tier lower, you have every other champion you can think of. Now, every other champion you can think of isn't going to be bad. This is why I didn't use A, B, C, D, F tier. There are no F tier champions in this game. There are no D tier. There are barely any C tier. Every champion is viable, especially when talking about Gold Arena. There are even some champions that can make it into Platinum with the right gear that are not on this list. So if you don't see your champion, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean they're bad. That's never going to be a reflection of any good tier list. If you are told that a champion's bad, it's just not how things work. So I would be interested in the comments below what champions you think could be added to this list that are above average, and give me your reasoning below. I am going to be doing a defensive tier list. It's going to be 95% provided by the clan that I'm in, so keep an eye out for that. It's going to come out at some point as well. The defense one's going to be probably smaller, and it was definitely a lot harder to make than this one, but I do look forward to getting that out to you for sure. Once again, huge shout out to Rats and Sheeny for the footage. As always, if you enjoyed this content, smash the like button, subscribe, turn the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next upload.